Now, if there's something most of us have had at least once in our lifetime, is that everyone has rights. And that includes children. African parents, I'm talking to you, by the way. Children also have rights. Children have a right to education, a right to food, right to shelter, right to a clean and healthy environment, a right to education, right to proper health care, and so many others. And today's story is one story that essentially highlights the need for states to promote and protect these rights. Now, Article 39 of the Convention of the Rights of the Child states as follows: parties shall take all appropriate measures to promote physical and psychological recovery and social reintegration of a child of a victim of armed conflicts. Such recovery and reintegration shall take place in an environment which fosters health, self-respect, and dignity of the child. Now, for those asking, what is dignity of a child? Just from a basic understanding, it's essentially reinforcing the rights of this child and ensuring that these rights are protected by the state and by all parties involved. Now, today's story is rather interesting but tragic because we are looking at instances where children were exploited, children were used, children were abused, and their rights were merely non-existent. And for that, I decided I'm not going to do it alone. Hi, welcome back to the African Footprints podcast with me, Effie. And today I am pleased to welcome my first ever guest host on this platform. And yes, he's a child, so he'll introduce himself.
My name is Wema Dylan.
Hi, Wema.
Hi, Effie.
How old are you?
I'm 11 years old.
So what does Wema do for a living? Do you do anything for a living?
I'm a kid.
You're a kid.
I live for a living.
You live for a living?
Yeah.
You just breathe and go to school?
Yeah.
Must be nice. Adulting is a scam and it's coming. So, what are we going to talk about today, Wema? Just tell our audience.
Today we're going to talk about the civil wars in Sierra Leone, 1991 to 2002.
So what was this war like, or between who are the parties and what was the nature of the conflict?
The RUF was the party who was actually the worst, the bad one in there.
Why?
They were taking children to fight for the army.
Yeah, so what were they fighting for? What did they want?
They wanted diamonds.
Okay, now just for context, Sierra Leone around this time and today, Sierra Leone has quite a few diamond deposits, and because of this, even before the conflict, Sierra Leone was using children in the mines. And now, other than using children in the mines, now we're uncovering a different story. Sierra Leone was using children to fight in the civil war because, as we all understand, a war has two sides, right? So we had the RUF on one end and the Sierra Leone forces that were protecting the state. Now, the worst thing is that the state that is mandated to protect the rights of these children was also part of this vice because children made almost half of the soldiers, both in the RUF and in the state parties. And so, Wema, just tell us a little bit what you understand about how these children were recruited, or how did children start having guns in Sierra Leone?
Well, children were actually recruited from their homes. Sometimes when they were walking to school, they would see trucks coming, picking them just like that.
From the side of the road?
Yeah. And also sometimes they would burn their villages and take the children, sometimes cut off the arms of the adults.
Yes. So essentially it was kidnapping, coercion, and murder, just to summarize, because like he said, and I'll just echo that, they would often take kids who are going to school, and just as your child is on their way to school, they would kidnap them, put them in trucks, and take them to the camps. Sometimes they would come to villages in Sierra Leone, burn the entire village, kill the adults, and take the children. And why do you think they were using children? For me, I thought it's because children are still young, and their brain is not fully formed, they're still developing, so it's easier to coerce them than coerce an adult. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's true. Actually, I think it's very true because, first of all, the mind of a child is a little bit small, including me. My mind is so small.
How is your mind small and you're here talking about civil war in Sierra Leone? Okay, yes, tell us.
Yeah, so over imagine over 500,000 people were drafted from their homes just because of that war.
500,000 children.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
500,000. Just imagine.
And this is just something, let me put it out there. Use of children in armed conflict is not new in Africa. And it's not new in Sierra Leone because they have used children before. But the use of children became worse around this time when they were having the civil war. And they were recruited to be part of what was called the small boys unit, right? And you can already see a bias because, well, the girls were supposed to take care of the boys during war. They would actually kidnap girls as well, but the girls would not go to war. The girls were essentially just doing the house duties, cooking for them, and things like that. And the boys would go to war and were getting trained for that. Now, Wema, I just want to ask you this. And I think it's a conversation we had before we started shooting. Do you think these children were criminals or were they victims? And why?
They were both. They were criminals because they killed. They were victims because they were forced to kill.
Because they were forced to kill.
Yes.
Now, if you were in that situation, what would you have done?
There's no escaping it. It's like there's no escaping it. If you're in that situation, don't say all hope is lost, but all hope is lost in that situation.
So you would fight?
I would fight, but then I don't want to kill. So if I don't kill, I'll suffer because they'll torture me. So it's better to just end it than suffer. It's better to just die than suffer, to be honest.
Okay. Now, Emma, I want to trigger your thinking about something. So if there was one thing the RUF was known for, it was their brutality. RUF were known for beheading people. They were known for maiming, like you've said, they would chop off people's hands. They were known for mutilating their victims, and essentially all sorts of these vices. So there is one aspect of the children taking part in this, and there's another aspect of the children seeing this, seeing the people being maimed, seeing their families being killed. What do you think is the effect of them seeing and them participating on the child? What do you think is the effect of that on the children, that on those children?
The effect was so sad on them.
Psychologically, right?
Yeah.
Do you think those kids would think the same again?
No. Yes, actually they would.
Why?
Maybe because if you grow up, you'll just have a forgetful mind.
You think so? You think they would forget seeing people being beheaded?
No.
I don't think they would forget. It takes a lot of effort for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as you know, there was a lot of intermediary action. The UN came in and tried to just take part and bring peace into the country and essentially trying to rehabilitate these children back into the society. So according to you, do you think these children deserve to be punished like criminals, or should they be rehabilitated, or rather retrained to be children and just think normally and brought back to the society?
I think they should be rehabilitated.
You think they should be rehabilitated?
Yeah.
Okay, now this is just a trick question for our audience. And it's a very personal one. According to you, would you be comfortable with those children around you? No, you won't? Why? You'd be scared?
Imagine being next to someone who has been training in the wrong side of the military for years, actually a long time, and has been trained to use their fists to kill people. Would you be comfortable, even you?
Even I wouldn't, and I'm an adult. I'd be scared of you, Wema, you holding a gun. Would you be scared of a Wema holding a gun?
I play a lot of Call of Duty, so yeah.
No, you should not play Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Children, stop playing Call of Duty. It's a violent game.
It's not that
Anyway,
violent.
Wema, just in addition to what we've said about the rehabilitation, think about this. These children, when they're trained as soldiers, you've seen how soldiers are trained, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about using guns and training them to use guns, but it's more about being able to fight with or without a gun. So it's essentially fight with whatever is at your disposal. They can find this table, the small one here, and they can use it to maim you. They can use it to kill you. So do you think juvenile prisons would work best as opposed to rehabilitation?
No.
You don't think so? Why?
That's just training more violence. It's literally juvenile prison. It's prison.
It brings in more violence?
Yes.
Why?
Because now, a gang's gonna pull up, hey, give me your lunch. Hey, give me your lunch. And then now the fight starts. Now more anger starts.
Okay, this is where you know that there's a difference between at least kids in Kenya and kids in Sierra Leone. He's thinking they're going to ask for his lunch. Those ones are not asking for your lunch. They're not asking for anything. They'll just come chop your head off. But it's cool. At least you're normal. We thank God for that. At least you're normal. So now there is something I just want to highlight. When the United Nations came in and just tried to bring peace and foster peace and security, they would use the DDR method, as it was commonly referred to. Now this is one, disarmament. So disarmament was essentially collecting and taking back all the guns and all the weapons that had been put in the hands of the kids. And the second one, the second D, was demobilization. So this is essentially discharging the kids from active combat duty and essentially removing them from being a soldier and starting to retrain them to become a child again. And it was a bit difficult because, some of them refused to leave the rebel groups, right?
Some of them actually succeeded in escaping.
In escaping from the rehabilitation?
Yes.
And went back to the rebel groups.
Mm.
You can imagine that. So it's quite a lot because, like we've said at the beginning, there is one aspect that a child's mind is still young and forming. So it's very easy to essentially rework them to be a soldier. And now imagine it was also difficult to rework them again to be a normal child. And the third method they were using, that is the R, is the reintegration. And this is where it's just essentially enabling these children who are now referred to as ex-soldiers regain their citizenship status, become children again. And some of them were taken to other countries so that they can be rehabilitated there, right?
Yeah.
Just removing them from a conflict-prone areas, and taking them to areas that have peace. So, Wema, I would just like to ask you something. What do you think is the best approach in dealing with child soldiers? Because it still happens, right? Mm-hmm. There are some militia groups that live in the Congo forest and forests in Uganda and places like that still use child soldiers. So how can we make the story different? Because your concern was you are a child, you would not want to be used for such vices, right? So what do you think is the best course of action? What should states do?
That's a hard question.
Hard for a child?
If they remove them, now they're vulnerable to be, conquered. Mm-hmm. No, not conquered. I'll just use it, conquered.
Okay.
But if they don't remove them, now they're going to corrupt their minds. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But do you think it has an effect in terms of they're removing them from their home country? Would you want to be removed from your home country?
No.
It would be difficult for you to adjust, right? So yeah. I don't think these kids are okay because first they have fought in battles. They have seen things that no child or even adult should be able to see. And now for them to be okay, you have to take them from their country and dump them in a whole new country. They have to learn a whole new language, sometimes a whole new culture. So you think it would leave a bad effect on the children, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, they'll grow up to know it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and read it in books, so they'll still know. They can't detach themselves from that history.
Yeah.
So Wema, I just want to know your final views about overall the war in Sierra Leone and the use of child forces. So just tell us anything you'd want to tell our audience.
Well, I would like to say that the founder of the rebels, the RUF, was called Fode Sango. He was a brutal man. Obviously, he started RUF. And he wanted a lot of money. That's the reason he started it. He wanted to make a diamond empire, but it wouldn't last long because sometimes things are limited. Yeah. Okay.
So, like the Bible says, the love of money is the root of all evil. So we can say, right?
Yeah.
But essentially, for me, when I was reading this story, when you highlighted it, it was, by the way, if I didn't say, he highlighted it on my TikTok page. I I think I'll copy him so that you guys can check out his page. I don't think he has anything, but
To be honest, I only have Roblox. I only have Roblox on my page.
really,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm gonna delete them all so people don't see.
That's
December
part of
last.
being a child. At least he's not in war, kids. At least he's not in battle. Anyway, so what I was saying is there are countries, when I was just reading this story and looking around it, and the whole thing of child soldiers, there are countries that have normalized having child soldiers to the point that it's not really shocking. And it's not just about having child soldiers. Children are exploited in different other ways, right? We have children who worked in mines. There are places even in Kenya, even in our country, where children work simply because, oh, let's say, just an example, the mom owns the restaurant, the child after school comes and works. That's also exploitation, except most of us don't think it's exploitation because, it's my child. But when you heighten it to a situation like a civil war, like what was happening in Sierra Leone, and mark you, it happened from 1991 to 2002. If you can't count, for children who are watching, use your fingers. That's so many years.
11.
So having children as part of that war, having children witness the atrocities that happened during that war, not only changes their way of thinking, it affects them a lot psychologically, it affects them mentally. It essentially, the entire fabric of what makes them a child is removed. And that means this person does not think like a child, does not act like a child. But still, again, I ask the question, when Article 39 talks of all measures to protect the rights and dignity of the children, are you taking part in protecting the rights of the child, or are you part of the perpetrators? And like Wema had told us, these kids were both victims and they're also criminals. But there's a very thin line here, because in as much as they were criminals, they were not criminals by their own choice or because they wanted to be criminals. They were essentially forced to do that because they didn't have a choice. Like he said, they would be killed. If you try to run away, you would be killed. And if you are put in that situation, what would you do? Anyway, so I would want to end this story there. Feel free to leave a comment telling us any instances or any countries that you know have had child soldiers, and essentially what you think about having child soldiers, the psychological effect. And I think I will have Wema back on another episode. Tell me if you want him back. Give him a thumbs up. Thank you so much, Wema, for coming, and thank you for suggesting this story. It's something we needed to talk about. How do you feel being on African Footprints podcast?
I feel nice.
It feels nice, right? Thank you so much for coming, and thank you guys for watching. Bye.
My Lord, may God forgive him for saying such.
I could not be without having a woman because that could give me prostate cancer.
And I can only imagine the sense of betrayal, anger, and uncertainty.
Najenga damu ya Aror na Kimwarer kule katika sehemu ya Elgeyo Marakwet.
I went to Alliance Girls School. That was the school that people who would make it went to.
Africa, a land rich in natural resources, wildlife, and diverse culture. Historically seen as a dark continent, I think it's time we shed some light on the stories of people and events that have shaped our beautiful continent. Join me through this journey as we retrace our African footprints.